Good evening, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Immigration and Settlement with Faryal Hussain. मैं हूँ Faryal Hussain, आपकी host. I used to be an immigration officer for the Government of Canada for 16 years. I am now an immigration consultant as well, licensed practice here in Ontario, and obviously I am the host of this show. But the other thing is that I'm also a human being. And because of that fact, this show is going to be a little spiritual, and there's a reason for that. Firstly, I want to apologize in advance if I lose my train of thought. Reason being is that I haven't really prepped for the show today, so it's going to be more extempore. Extempore का मतलब आपको पता है कि जैसे ही बात ज़हन में आ रही है, मुँह से निकलती आ रही है, कोई प्रेप नहीं है, कोई बनावट नहीं है इसमें. तो बात यह है कि ये शो उन सीरीज़ का पहला शो है फैमिली क्लास स्पॉन्सरशिप्स के बारे में. So there will be a 4-part series on family class sponsorship. Why 4 parts? Because there's a need for that. It's a huge category of immigration. There's economic class, there's refugee class, there's family class. Family class is the first one I chose, then I will do economic class, then I will do the refugee class. Why is this going to be a spiritual program? What I think, there's a school of thought that every human being is a square. A perfect square is one in which all 4 corners are complete. You have your family, you have your work, you have yourself, and then you have your significant other. So if any one of them is missing or any one of them is not in your life and you want them to be in your life and it's not there, वो square जो है वो skew हो जाता है, थोड़ा सा टेढ़ा हो जाता है, और उससे क्या होता है, बाकी सारे अनासर पे असर पड़ता है. So how is that going to affect this show? Family class. So whether you are in Canada and you are a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident or a registered Indian under the Indian Act of Canada, and you want to sponsor a member of your family to come live permanently in Canada, how do you do that? And more importantly, when can you not do that? And if you cannot do that, how do you fix that? Or is it fixable? There are a lot of variables. This is why we needed a 4-part series. So what exactly is family class? Family class is one of the classes in which the selection criteria कोई नहीं है. There is no point system. आपको कोई points नहीं मिलते कि you're married to your spouse. आपको कोई points नहीं मिलते कि you have 1 kid or 5 kids or 20 kids. It's not like economic class कि जिसमें आपको IELTS के points मिलते हैं, आपको age के points मिलते हैं, आपको work experience के points मिलते हैं. This is truly and truly based on the relationship and satisfying an officer of the relationship. That is the basic crux of the family class sponsorship. अब आप किसको कैसे मुतमईन कर सकते हैं? Some people are happy, satisfied with just 1 toast with coffee. Some people are satisfied with 4 toasts, but that's fine. हर officer की अपनी satisfaction का एक criteria होता है. So how do you kind of balance that? Because each officer is going to apply the same law, IRPA, Immigration, Refugee and Protection Act. So अगर हर officer यही act को apply कर रहे हैं, why is it that one officer might refuse the application but the other one might approve it? Very good question. You're thinking, Faryal, how do we fix that? How do we go around it? I always say one thing, knowledge is power. I have a current client. I said that to him उनके सामने एक दफ़ा, and he came back to my office, and you know who you are. And he said, Faryal ji, मैं हूँ any दफ़ा इस्तेमाल करना पूरे दिन इतना कि knowledge is power, which is true. कि आपको पता हो कि आपकी requirements क्या हैं, चाहे वो कोई भी चीज़ हो. आपकी जॉब की requirements हैं, आपने कहीं पे अप्लाई करना है उसकी requirements क्या है, application है, immigration है, anything. Requirements क्या हैं? You need to know what the selection criteria is. Family class, unfortunately, is more of satisfying another human being that what we have said or you have said in the application is true. And your intentions of what you have put on the applications are that you have put in the applications, and it's nothing else. Bear in mind, the application, paper जो है, ये आपकी application है. And I've said this many times, probably hundreds of times to applicants when I used to interview them, that the application is not your sponsors or your consultants or your friends or your neighbors or your dads or your mom. This is your application. You are responsible for all the information in this application. अनफॉर्चुनेटली बहुत दफ़ा एप्लीकेंट्स जो हैं और क्लाइंट्स जो हैं वो रिलाई करते हैं दूसरे सोर्सेज पे about the information that's going to be on the application, and they don't even bother going through it because obviously there's that trust factor, which is fine. I'm not saying you shouldn't trust your sponsor or your consultant or your brother or your friend or your father or your neighbor or whoever. Trust ज़रूर करें, but at least go through the application, because at the end of the day कोई भी information अगर उसमें गलत है, उसमें misleading है, उसमें incomplete है, you are the one who's going to pay the price, nobody else. So keep in mind, you are the one who is responsible for your application. Now, coming back to family class. Well, let's start from the beginning. To become a citizen of Canada, you usually have to either have been born in Canada or been adopted by a Canadian citizen, or you are sponsored and you become a permanent resident, and then you can apply for citizenship if you meet the eligibility requirements. So basically, to become a permanent resident, what do you need? You need to be eligible and you need to be admissible. These are the only two things. It's not rocket science. Rocket science यहाँ पे आती है कि how can you be eligible? Eligibility का criteria क्या है? Again, there's 3 classes. Family class, which we are going to discuss in this 4-part series. Then there's the economic class, which will be the second of the series, and then third will be the refugee class. So we'll leave the second and third for now. Family class, what exactly is it? Family is important. There are 12 objectives of Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, and family reunification is one of the objectives. Is one of the main objectives. I think it's the second objective. As I said, I didn't prepare for this, so this is just off the top of my head. So because it is so important, the selection criteria is very lenient. There is no point system. You are not compared to anybody else. The officer is going to look at the application, and if there's an interview required, he or she may interview you and then take a decision based on what's on the application or based on what was said in the interview. Now, how can you satisfy an officer of what you are thinking? It's all what is presented in the file. There's one thing called overkill. बहुत दफ़ा ऐसा होता है कि अगर application में 6 months की bank statement की requirement है, I would get 2 years of bank statements. That's overkill. जिस चीज़ की ज़रूरत नहीं है, आप उसको submit ना कीजिए. But more importantly, जिस चीज़ की ज़रूरत है, and if you don't have it, explain to the officer why you don't have it and what other documents you are presenting in lieu of that missing document. Don't just put it to one side thinking, you know what, the officer might be half asleep and she or he might even forget about it. Please don't do that. Make a list of what are the requirements, and if you don't have any of the documents, just explain in simple words what other documents you are providing in place of that missing document. Please, 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 3 times I'm saying, please, 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 6 times. Please don't go and get a late issued document. Don't get one made, don't get one issued, because that will defeat the purpose. If you do get one issued, make sure it is current dated, not backdated. Please don't do that. I have refused many, many applications because somehow or another, I don't want to go into details, but applicants were able to get documents that were backdated. But when they were verified, you know, पता चलता था कि ये application के ये documents जो हैं, ये उन institutions के या उन government इदारों की files में है ही नहीं. So then there's a problem. And what is the problem? Misrepresentation, गलत बयानी. Misrepresentation used to carry a ban of 2 years, but now it's 5 years. So for 5 years, if you have misrepresented yourself, intentionally or unintentionally, there is a ban of 5 years. You cannot put in any type of application. I don't think you want that over your head. So if you don't have a mandatory document, just try to explain to the officer why you don't have it, and number 2, what other documents you are presenting in place of that document. Okay? So coming back to family class. The first and foremost is obviously the spouse or partner or dependent children class. So you're a Canadian citizen, you're a permanent resident, you're single, you're divorced, you're a widow, you're a widower, and you want to get married and you want to sponsor your spouse or your partner. This partner can be a same-sex partner, this partner can be a common law partner, this partner can be a married spouse. It doesn't matter. The definitions are slightly different, and because of that, the document requirements are slightly different of these three categories. We'll get into more details of these three when we come back from the break, because it's very important to know what the differences are. Common law, a married spouse, and conjugal partner. So we'll be right back after the break. Don't go away.
जिंदगी शम्मा की सूरत हो खुदाया मेरी।
मुस्लिम वेलफेयर सेंटर के जरिए आप पाकिस्तान के रेगिस्तान में प्यासों को पानी पिला सकते हैं, गरीब बच्चों की तालीम और माली परवरिश कर सकते हैं, बीमारों का मुफ्त इलाज करवा सकते हैं। ज़कात, सदक़ात या फिदिया देने के लिए आज ही हमें फ़ोन करें 1-866-754-3111।
A harsh but true reality is that clean drinking water is inaccessible to many people living in third world countries. With the support of our donors, Muslim Welfare Canada has been successful in providing clean water through the digging of water wells and the installation of hand pumps for people living in remote and desert regions. Donate a well or a hand pump, call 1-866-754-3111 or visit mwcanada.org.
Welcome back, and I hope you're still with us. It's going to be a very interesting series. This is part one of the family class series. You're watching Citizenship and Immigration. No, you're watching Immigration and Settlement with Farel Hussain. So we were talking about family class and the spousal categories of family class. तो पहली category हो गई married spouse. If you are legally married in one country and that marriage is legally valid in Canada as well, that means you are a legally valid spouse and you can proceed with the application. बहुत दफ़ा ऐसा होता है कि the marriage may be legally valid in the country in which it took place, whatever country it was, but it's not legally valid in Canada. अब क्या करें? I have faced this issue with my applicants as well as with my clients several times. The marriage has to be legally valid in both countries, जहाँ पे वो शादी हुई, and also by Canadian law. Which means अगर शादी ऐसी कंट्री में हुई है जहाँ पे सेकंड मैरिज या पोलीगमी अलाउड है, लेकिन कनाडा में क्योंकि अलाउड नहीं है, वो एप्लीकेशन जो है it may not meet the requirements of a spouse or a married spouse. What do you do then? Again, knowledge is power. So you have to know that distinct difference between marriage in the other country as well as marriage, or the definition of marriage in Canada. Same thing for divorce. If you got divorced in one country, that divorce has to be legally valid in Canada as well. Actually, that has to be cut off. If you are divorced in one country, that divorce has to be legally valid in that country. So it's very important to know what the legal requirements of divorce are in that country. Divorce itself इतना एक नाखुशगवार अमल है कि बहुत ज़्यादा कल्चर्स में इतनी इम्पोर्टेंस नहीं दी जाती कि डॉक्यूमेंट्स क्या होने चाहिए. You know, just brush it under the rug, बस बात ख़त्म हो गई है, let's move on, which is fine. But when it comes to immigration, no. You can't just move on by just brush it in under the rug. You have to have the proper papers and documents, then have the second marriage or third marriage, whatever the case may be. So knowing what the requirements are for divorce in that country is very important. Also, what's important is to know what the requirements are based on the 3 spousal categories. So the first one is married spouse, but the second one is common law spouse. So what does that mean? What is common law spouse? Like, is it just a category jo it's in the North American culture and South Asian culture mein nahi hota कि you're married but you're not married and you're living together but you're not married? Like, ये क्या चीज़ है? It's very simple, extremely simple. गौर से सुनिए. If you are living under the same roof with someone in a spouse-like relationship for at least 1 year, that means you are in a common law relationship. Again, अगर आप किसी के साथ एक छत के नीचे 1 साल तक एटलीस्ट रह रहे हैं, एक स्पाउसल रिलेशनशिप कोहैबिटेशन कर रहे हैं, हस्बैंड वाइफ की तरह रह रहे हैं, मगर आपका कोई मैरिज सर्टिफिकेट नहीं है, लीगली वैलिड मैरिज सर्टिफिकेट नहीं है इन कनाडा, तो वो एक कॉमन लॉ रिलेशनशिप भी कंसिडर की जा सकती है. इट्स नॉट ऑटोमेटिक, यू हैव टू प्रूव इट, बट कंसिडर की जा सकती है. सो कीप दैट इन माइंड. सो ऑल दोज मैरिजेस दैट वर legally valid in the other country, but they were not legally valid in Canada, those marriages, yes, those relationships can be processed or can be presented or can be prepared in the application of a common law relationship. I'm giving you an inside story because that's knowledge, and knowledge is power. एक दो कंसल्टेंट ने मुझे कहा, फरहाद इतनी इन्फॉर्मेशन आप टीवी पे दे देती हैं तो लाइक व्हाट्स गोना हैपन, हमारे पास तो जॉब नहीं होगी. Obviously they were saying it in jest, but it's true. All this information is not readily understood by a layman. This is why I'm here. I take time out of my day to come here to explain these things, because एक गलत स्टेप जब एक गलत एप्लीकेशन सबमिट होती है और फिर वो रिफ्यूज़ल की तरफ जाती है, फिर वो अपील की तरफ जाती है, how much time is wasted and how much money is wasted is beyond belief. So आपको अगर पहले से इल्म हो कि आपकी मैरिज सर्टिफिकेट जो है वो आपकी अपनी कंट्री में वैलिड है, कनाडा में वैलिड नहीं है, then you do need to consult with someone who knows what they're doing, who knows at least what they're talking about, and more importantly, how they can present your application. It's not as easy, as simple as saying, okay, I want to do a common law application. You have to present it in that way. If you had a basket of fruits, you had an apple, couple of bananas, oranges, grapes, and you said, okay, here, have some fruit. Well, all the fruits in the basket, what am I going to do? It's right there. उसी fruit को आप उसको wash करके उसको slice and dice करके put it in a bowl. Farhal, here's some fruit cocktail. Same fruit, but how is it presented? Same thing. With your application, how is it presented? All the elements are there, लेकिन elements को आपने basket में रखा, उसको आपने सही तरह present नहीं किया. ऑफिसर जो है वो उस एप्लीकेशन को सही तरह असेस नहीं कर सकते, and when they can't assess, they will ask a question once and twice, and at the end of the day they might take a decision that may not be in your favor. So if you have a straightforward spousal application, you can even do it on your own. There's no harm. A lot of information is available on the immigration website, canada.ca, cic.gc.ca. You can consult with family, with friends if it's straightforward. But if there are some elements that could be a cause for concern for an officer, it might be a good idea to at least get some consultation or get some guidance from someone who is licensed, or probably someone who's taken a decision on a few applications herself. My name is Farhal Hussain. I used to be an immigration officer for the Government of Canada. Hopefully my numbers are appearing on the screen so you can jot them down. I do try to take every call. Very rarely that one of my staff members will pick up my phone. I try to provide one-on-one because it's very important. So coming back to spouses. So spouses की तो ये दो categories. Third category is a conjugal relationship. That is meant strictly for same-sex relationships that cannot live together for at least a year in the home country. So if you're in that kind of a situation, you need to understand what the requirements are, and then obviously you can get the help of somebody who's licensed or someone who has some experience and submit your application. So there are the three distinct spousal categories: married spouse, common law spouse, and conjugal spouse. Good. Now, what about a spouse who's already here in Canada? For whatever reason, they're here. They were here as a visitor. All these hearts start flying, and lo and behold, you get married. Hopefully not that quickly, but things happen. What do you do then? An inland spousal application. Beautiful. Again, the requirements are going to be different because hopefully you will be living with your spouse. You have a marriage certificate from the province in which you've gotten married, and the application will go through smoothly. One benefit of the inland spousal application is that once the first stage is cleared, once the sponsor's eligibility is cleared, your spouse can be issued an open work permit. So he or she doesn't have to sit at home, हाथ पे हाथ रख के wait करें कि कब PR आए and कब उसका sin issue हो and कब they can go and be a part of the labor force. So while the application is being processed, as long as part 1 is cleared, sponsor's eligibility is cleared, your spouse, he or she can apply for and obtain an open work permit. So do keep that in mind. But the other important thing, the whole time the application is being processed, your spouse needs to remain in legal immigration status, which means basically अगर वो visitor पे यहाँ पे आई थी या आए थे, तो 6 months के अंदर अंदर उनका visitor status valid रहेगा, उसके बाद expire हो जाएगा. Expire होने से पहले, भले आप 2 दिन पहले, you need to apply for an extension. And in the extension, put that reason in, that I have sponsored my spouse and the application in process, this is the file number, or I haven't received the file number, and now I'm applying for an extension so that she can remain within legal status. So when you do start the application, pull out a calendar, every 6 months के ऊपर आप निशान लगा लें कि this is when you need to apply for an extension, अगर उस वक्त तक PR नहीं हुआ. These dates are very important. You know, रोज़मर्रा की ज़िंदगी में you forget these dates. You forget to renew your driving license, or you forget to renew, I don't know, the prescription or a subscription or something. But these dates are important because if they are not within a valid legal status, then you have to apply for restoration, which is additional cost, and that will put your spousal application, it may put your spousal application in jeopardy, so you don't want to do that. So make sure you know exactly what the requirements are. And as I said, like myself, there are so many other licensed immigration consultants. I keep saying licensed because there is a certain accountability. If you go to somebody who's going to be charging you half the price, but giving you half the information and causing you a whole lot of grief, I don't think that would be advisable. The decision is yours at the end of the day. So, spousal applications में एक और चीज़, inland application. I had a client, she called me and she said, well, मैं अपने husband को sponsor करना चाह रही हूँ, लेकिन मेरे पास उनका passport नहीं है, तो मैं wait कर रही हूँ. And I'm like, okay, well, what are you waiting for? That उनका passport issue होगा तो फिर ही sponsor कर सकती हूँ. I'm like, no, ऐसा कहीं नहीं है. So I guided her over the phone. I said, you know, open up this form, INN 0008, and there's a question on the second page or third page that, do you have a valid travel document or a passport? You can say yes or you can say no. If you say yes, then that window opens up and you enter the details. You enter the passport number, the country of issue, the issue date, expiry date. If you say no, that window closes and you can continue filling in the rest of the form. What does that mean? It means that you can continue, you can submit the application even though you don't have a passport. When I told her, she was shocked. She was like, oh my God, I've waited so many months just for the passport. Had I known, अभी तक मैंने application submit भी की होती. So it just take a little time and go through the forms, and if you have any misconceptions, क्योंकि assumptions नहीं करने चाहिए, misconceptions होते हैं और उसकी वजह से गया हुआ time तो कभी वापस नहीं आता. So that was one important thing that one of my clients recently learned, and I'm passing this on to you. Inland spousal applications की एक और बात भी हो सकती है. बहुत लोगों की सोच होती है कि inland spousal application submit की हुई है, no, you have to stay in Canada, you can't leave. ऐसा भी कुछ नहीं है. The criteria that you have to meet is that you are in a genuine relationship. So if you want to go on vacation, you can go up Canada में है, as a visitor or as a student, or now you're being sponsored, you're not in jail that you can't leave. That's ridiculous. So whoever's telling you these things, please tell them to give me a call, or tell them to go and check the website, canada.ca. I have so much more to tell you. This is just part 1. I plan to do a 4-part series, but I don't know, it could be 6 parts. Family class, then economic class, then the refugee class. I hope you're enjoying this. Stay tuned next week for part 2 of the family class series, and this is Faryal Hussain. with the ending of the show, Immigration and Settlement. Have a great week, and if you have any questions, please post them on the website page, on the Facebook page, and I will try to answer them. Stay safe and good night.